for, gosh, a couple of years now. There's this funny thing that happens. Everything that the left touches dies, right? Like everything. It's like the opposite of King Midas. Everything he touched turned to gold. Everything liberals touch turns to, you know what? So the free market created this amazing thing called cryptocurrency, right? Creative people came up with this, and it's been a great thing for people. But now the big government liberal crowd wants to put government in charge of it with what they call central bank digital currencies. Essentially, they want to federalize cryptocurrency. It's a terrible idea because what they want to do is get rid of cash, right? You know, like good old-fashioned greenbacks. And central bank digital currencies are a terrible idea, and we have to fight them and make sure that that doesn't come to fruition. Well, at the same time, allowing free market cryptocurrency to continue, and if that's something people want to invest in and enjoy the benefits of that, they should be able to do that in a market-oriented, free market sense. Putting the government in charge of it is a recipe for tyranny, quite honestly, because, as you were saying, it would give the government the ability to shut off the financial supply. And I think the one thing we've learned about the liberals is that they do not allow any crisis to go to waste. It's the old Rahm Emanuel. Remember Obama's old chief of staff? He said, never let a crisis go to waste. So the next time they have some kind of crisis, whether it's made up or not, they could just shut off the entire financial system if they controlled it through central bank digital currencies. We do not want to give them that power. We, the people, should be able to engage in free market transactions with one another without the government knowing what we're doing or being able to shut it down.
Yeah.
They're doing the same thing with the electric car also.
Oh, yeah.
They push the electric car, and they can control that.
Mm-hmm.
One day we don't have electricity, and we can go anywhere.
And you know, it's even more insidious than that, I think. We all remember when we turned 16 and we got our driver's license. What did that represent? Freedom, right? Like mobility. When you were 16 and you finally got behind the wheel, you were like, wow, I can go anywhere, I can do anything. And it's really, I don't think they like private vehicle ownership at all. I think that they want to get us to a point where everybody's either, you know, like renting a car or relying on public transit and not having public transit's fine if it
Depend on the
works.
government to move, yeah.
But the freedom to own your own vehicle and be able to move around the country freely is important. So, other questions? Jack.
On that same point, I know that Congress just passed a measure to put a so-called kill switch into new vehicles, not just electric vehicles, but all vehicles in the future. And unfortunately, one of our Republican representatives, Mike Carey, actually voted in favor of that measure. So I think that this kind of, the point that you're making about this sort of insidious, incremental desire for control over things, purportedly with good intentions, sows the seeds of disaster.
Well, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, is the old saying, right? Allowing the federal government to control your vehicle is a very bad idea, right? I mean, I don't even like the how automated a lot of things are in cars these days, like the little bell that rings if you decide not to buckle your seatbelt or whatever else. Like it goes too far. Absolutely. Other questions? Yes, sir.
I guess more of a comment. In terms of your first point being about the economy, it's all about production. Economies are run on production. If you don't have production, you don't have a good economy. And so everything we're talking about is control. If you're allowing the government to control the means of production, that's what the communists do.
Sure.
That's what the socialists
do. It's right there
do.
in the Communist Manifesto.
What's that?
It's right there in the means of production. That's right out of the Communist Manifesto.
Sure, and even like say even in Nazi Germany, it was just slightly but people want to think Nazi is a right wing thing. It's a left wing. It's just slightly.
What does that acronym stand for?
National
Socialism.
Yeah, exactly. And so I mean just to the defining point, I think when you talk about economy is talk about production. Why does Haiti not have a great economy? Are they too stupid to want stuff? It's about production. They can't produce, and you take away means of production, and that's what government control is all about. So I love the fact that you're limited government, and I think that's just you know,
This may
simplify
seem
it.
like a just kind of a big esoteric idea, but I think that there's really three things that have been the secret sauce for America's prosperity throughout our history. It is abundant human resources. I'm talking about creative, hard-working, gritty people that are just willing to get up in the morning and work hard and make things happen. Second, abundant natural resources, right? So human resources, abundant natural resources, from farmland to coal to timber to oil and gas to two great oceans to great rivers. This country's been blessed with abundant natural resources. And then the third thing is the freedom to make the first two work. So it's human resources, natural resources, and freedom to make the other two actually work. And what we're losing right now is the third one, the freedom to actually make the human resources and the natural resources function in this country, and that's what we need to turn around.
I'm gonna take that back.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
This is more as a comment, as he says. This election for me is more important than ever because my two boys are in the Navy, and the oldest one is in deployment right now, on his way to China, Vietnam, all of those.
Thank you.
All of those countries.
way.
Very proud of them.
Thank God for Blue Star mothers, right? Military moms like you. Yeah.
Yes. And as I was saying, this is more important than ever for me because President Trump, who I support and I vote for him the 2 times that he ran, and he never participated in any war. And we are on our way to a war. What do you think, that we are going to have a war? What is your?
I think that we need to do everything we can to avoid a war, right? But I also believe in peace through strength. It's the old Reagan doctrine, right? If you want peace, you must be willing to fight for it.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
Seems kind of like an interesting way to say it, but if you want peace, you've got to be willing to fight for it. Or the other way to say this is the best way to avoid a war is to have an extremely capable national defense apparatus. And that means from the fighting men and women in the military to the industrial base that it takes to make that happen. I mean, one of the reasons why we won both world wars, why we won the Cold War, is American industrial capacity, and that's something else that we've lost. And so, listen, when I'm sworn in, I'll be the first Green Beret to ever serve in the United States Senate. And happy to say, an enlisted man. I'm a sergeant first class. I'm still a reservist. I get to be sergeant first class LaRose on the weekends, and I love, and I'll be one of only 2 members of the Senate who's still serving. Right now, there's 1 member of the Senate who still wears the uniform. That's unusual throughout American history. The only senator who's still a reservist in the military is Dan Sullivan from Alaska. He's a Marine reservist, okay? And so I'll be joining him as only the 2nd member of the Senate who's still serving. One of the things about wars are that the only thing worse than a war is one that gets arbitrarily drug out. And usually it's because of the politicians intervening too much, right? You need to trust the generals and the admirals and to give them the resources and then hold them accountable, but give them the resources they need to make sure that things end quickly. Ukraine is a great example. If President Trump had been in the White House, I don't think it would have ever happened, first of all, right? I don't think that Vladimir Putin, who by the way is a KGB agent through and through, that's his background, that's his mentality, he sees weakness. He's trained like a dog. He's trained to sense weakness. And he detects weakness from this administration, from the way that they withdrew from Afghanistan to the way they're allowing an invasion to occur on the southern border. And when a person like Putin detects weakness, they're going to exploit it. Okay? What's Biden's response been? Throw money at the problem, right? Because when you're holding a hammer, everything looks like a nail. When you're a Democrat, you believe that everything can be fixed by just throwing money at it. Again, we need to end that very quickly, and this is what President Trump has been saying, but you don't end it by surrender. You can end any war tomorrow. There's a surefire way to end any war, to wave the white flag. Well, that's not how we should end this conflict in Ukraine. We should end the conflict in Ukraine quickly by creating the circumstances on the ground for negotiated peace that actually helps the Ukrainians maintain their territorial sovereignty. Look to a region a little bit south of there. The reason why Iran allowed their proxies, and let's be clear, Hamas doesn't do anything without Iran's backing.
Yes.
Hezbollah doesn't do anything without Iran's backing. The Houthi rebels, the Houthi militias in Yemen don't do anything without Iran's backing. Iran gave them the green light to attack because of Biden's weakness. And if America is strong and if America leads, the world is more secure and we are more safe as a country. Yes, sir.
Hey Frank, so I'm from Dayton, and I was on my way down to see Congressman Kerry yesterday morning, and I-75 was shut down for 2 hours. It took me 2 hours to go 20 miles, and I'm thinking, what horrible wreck has happened? Actually, I was praying, and it was because of potholes. Our interstates were created by President Eisenhower, not for us to go on vacation, but for national security.
Yeah, because Ike saw them in Germany when he was there as a general. He saw the Autobahn. He said, we need to have something like this. Yeah.
So growing up in Vandalia, actually, there's a road there called Brown School Road. It's an access road. It goes over 70, and the bridge over 70 was closed for a long time. It really disrupted that little town. And finally reopened. And what we learned years later, could be a fairy tale, but I've been assured it's not, is that bridge had to be raised because the Reagan's MX missile couldn't go under it. Now we know now, and I worked in Russia for 6 years, that the Reagan's MX missile, the special forces of intercontinental ballistic missiles, that could traverse this country up and down, north, south, east, and west, and still shoot intercontinental payload, scared the Russians to death. Mm-hmm. I'd like to know your ideas on taking your state executive capabilities to the U.S. Senate to improve our infrastructure that's crumbling. It will hit your key areas of jobs. It'll create jobs that are needed throughout this country. It'll reinforce our infrastructure for our national security, and it will help with commerce and go a long way. Included in that perhaps is border security. So thanks for the opportunity to ask the question.
So this is a real point of strength for me. I served as the Senate Transportation Chairman in the state Senate, and I did that for 5 years. Served on the Ohio Turnpike Commission, and if we focus on infrastructure the right way, it could be a real net positive for this country economically and militarily, as you point out. The problem is we're focused on the wrong things. But let me be clear about something first. Infrastructure investment is the smart kind of government spending. Government blows money on all kinds of nonsense. If we focus on, again, those key priorities of infrastructure, national defense, public safety, education, those are the things that government should be spending money on, but we're spending it on the wrong things. The Biden Department of Transportation declared that highways are racist. I don't even know what that means. No, they literally said that highways are racist. Okay, so they want to spend your money, and my girls and I love going for a bike ride, but they want to spend your money on bike trails and bike lanes and these noise walls along the interstate that don't actually work. They're spending money on the wrong things. They're also tying the hands of local investment with all kinds of rules and regulations. So to get something built, you need to go through years and years of environmental study, cultural study, this idea that highways are racist. You got to be able to prove that adding a third lane is not going to disproportionately impact some community somewhere. Like, listen, we need a third lane because the 2 lanes that we have are too congested. This is not, it's common sense. The way Ohio's done this is through a process called TRAC. And we took the politicians out of transportation planning a long time ago and put the professionals in charge of it to make sure that we're actually building roads that meet our needs economically and that kind of thing. So it's about taking away the useless regulations. It's about investing our dollars wisely and bringing more of them back to Ohio. We're kind of a donor state to the federal government. When you look at your federal highway taxes, we're talking about fuel taxes, we send more to Washington than we get back, but Ohio's a major transportation hub. I mean, if you look at I-90,
well, Vandalia is the crossroads of
75,
America.
77, 71. Ohio is the crossroads of America in a lot of ways. And by the way, that's also why human trafficking is such an impact here, because all of those highways cross in Ohio. So we need to invest in that stuff. We need to take the nonsense out of the way. Let me tell you about a bill that, and this always drives me nuts. A lot of candidates say, on day one, I'm going to introduce this bill. First of all you're going to do on day one is get sworn in and get the keys to your office, right? Like, let's stop lying about on day one. You're going to get sworn in, you're going to get the keys, you're going to figure out how to log into your computer. But in my first month, so I'm going to make realistic promises. In my first month in the U.S. Senate, I'm going to introduce a bill called the REINS Act. If you're not familiar with this, it has been introduced over and over again in Congress. It has passed in Congress, and it has died in the Senate. The REINS Act is called that because it pulls back the reins on the bureaucrats. Follow me. The worst things that the federal government does generally don't happen on the House floor or the Senate floor. They happen on the 20th floor of some federal office building where some unaccountable bureaucrat writes a rule about highways being racist or some nonsense like that. The bureaucrats are out of control. And that's where the shenanigans are happening in the federal government. So the REINS Act would pull back the reins. President Trump was on a good path to making them take away two old rules before they ever created one new one. That's kind of a blunt instrument way of doing it. The REINS Act would really pull back the reins on this. And here's another thing. There's a cultural change that needs to happen within the federal bureaucracy. And this is a really cool thing that Trump intended to do in his second term, which obviously he didn't get. He's going to get starting next year. Starting to move federal agencies out of Washington. Yes. With modern technology, they don't need to all live and breathe and work within the Beltway. The problem is it creates a massive form of groupthink, where they all go to the same cocktail parties, they all want to be popular in the same social circle, they listen to the same lobbyists. There's no reason why the FAA needs to be in Washington. Let's put it in Dayton. Right, where human air travel first began. There's no reason why the Department of Energy needs to be in Washington, D.C. It could be in Texas, or for that matter, in Ohio, where we're producing energy. Groups like the Bureau of Land Management could be out of D.C. and out west in where all the federal land is, right? And so the Department of Agriculture could be in Ohio or Iowa or Illinois or a place like that. Moving these federal agencies out of Washington, D.C. breaks up the federal cartel that currently exists in a really wise way as well. So, other questions? Yes, sir.
With the Intel chip plant coming into Ohio, my understanding is that just the energy needs of that facility alone is going to need like 3 more power plants just to operate that thing.
Yeah.
I made a trip to Findlay, Ohio last weekend, and just seeing them solar farms, it's just disgusting. I mean, just this. You mentioned common sense a couple times, but just natural gas is just it's the cure-all. I mean, it's just everywhere, and it's clean, and we can use it, and we can ship it, and you can pipe it, and it's just. I mean, it's just. What can we do to make Ohio like just a beacon of just
get the hell out of the way?
Right.
So a couple things on this. That Intel plant is a really good thing for Ohio. It's a really good thing for national security. Right now, something like 80% of the world's microchips come from a thing called TSMC. That's the Taiwan Semiconductor Company. And so Taiwan is a rather unstable part of the world right now because of the ambitions that China has. It's something else that we need to do something about. But we shouldn't have all of our eggs in that basket. Every missile, every radio, everything that the defense capability relies on includes microchips. Not to mention all of the civil applications, like all of our phones and every device that we have relies on microchips. So being able to manufacture those in Ohio is a good thing, a very good thing. It does require a lot of energy. I visited a plant in Guernsey County a couple weeks ago that's generating enough power to run 1.5 million homes every minute, and it's burning Ohio natural gas to do so. I was at a plant on the Ohio River just 1 week ago today that is creating 485 megawatts of power burning Ohio natural gas. But listen to how clean natural gas is. Just think about this. When you turn on your stove, is there a big cloud of smoke that comes up? No. You burn natural gas in your home unvented. That's how clean it is. The Biden administration wants to outlaw gas stoves, literally.
Yeah.
They're saying that new homes can't be equipped with gas stoves. Natural gas is clean domestic energy, but for some reason the Biden administration wants to declare war on it.
Because they can't control it like they can the electricity.
Yeah.
Exactly.
If they wanna shut the electricity off, they'll shut it off. They keep-
Control means.
The word control comes back
Yeah.
over and over again, right?
Control means
So
of production.
natural gas is the solution to a lot of things. I think nuclear is a part of the mix as well. If you want to have a thriving energy sector, you want to have diversity of fuels. You want to have natural gas, yes, coal as well, nuclear. But what we know is that you couldn't possibly build enough windmills or solar panels to fully power the grid because it's intermittent, right? In fact, you've got to build these natural gas for every windmill and solar field. You've got to have a natural gas plant to fill the gap when the wind doesn't blow or the sun doesn't shine. So it actually, the redundancy that you need to build in when you have all of these so-called renewable energy sources creates even more need to build more stuff. It's important that we get out of the way, and the federal government is very much in the way right now of more energy development, and we need to be, we need to be doing natural gas drilling here in Ohio and throughout the country. This new rule that the Biden administration put in place just last week, and by the way, some of us believe that they may have done it intentionally because they're mad at Texas right now, which is completely foolish, right? But they've said that we can't export natural gas. So when we can't export natural gas, what happens? Others around the world are gonna burn animal dung. Seriously, that's like dried animal dung is how people cook in vast parts of the world. They're gonna use Russian gas, which is leaky and unreliable and controlled by a dictator. They're going to use all these other things if they can't access American LNG, and the Biden administration basically just said we can't export our LNG anymore, which is foolish.
Market for it.
Yeah, Jack?
Okay, real quick comment question. You're talking about the Communist Manifesto.
Yeah.
And I highly recommend for you and the audience, actually, a book called The Anti-Communist Manifesto. I just finished reading it.
Okay.
And 2 chapters in particular, the one on environmentalism and education, are both deeply informative about
Yeah.
the history of how we've gotten to where we are
Yeah.
and why it's so dangerous to continue. Here's my question. You talked about the Pentagon, you talked about this importance of our national defense. My own brother just retired as a commander in the Navy from Quantico.
Okay.
He was very discouraged at the end of his career.
Yeah.
Because what he saw was his beloved institution in the military, having been on active duty and the reserve, caving in remarkably to this liberal, progressive, even Marxist worldview,
Yeah.
coming down from on high.
Yeah.
And it broke his heart, quite frankly. And I think it should break ours as well. And the question I have for you is, as a senator in the U.S., with the point that you made about you having been serving and still serving, what, if anything, can you do to reverse that?
Yeah. So let me start with the good news. As a person who's still part of the U.S. Army Special Operations Command, I'm happy to say that woke mind virus has not made its way to the special ops community yet. We have to be on guard against it. For those of us that are Green Berets, did they lower the standards for any of us based on our skin color or ethnicity? No. And we wouldn't have wanted to be part of something like that, right? You hear some politicians say, well, we should triple the number of special forces. Okay, what are you just going to put Green Berets on their head and say you're elite, now go be elite? No, you can't just triple the number of anything without lowering the standard. So we need to have a military that is capable and focused on its core competencies. Let's look at it at its most basic level. What does a military do? It kills people and breaks things until the other side gives up, right? I mean, this is rough business, and we need men and women of courage. And listen, yes, a lot of it is much more sophisticated than what I just described as far as some of the technology that we use and everything else. But at its most core level, the military needs to be capable of killing people and breaking things until the other side gives up. We've got politicians, some in uniform at the most senior level, right, that are focused on the wrong things. One of the great things about our military that I've always loved about it is what a meritocracy it is. And I saw this my first day in basic training. Nobody gave a damn what your skin color was, or how wealthy or how poor your family was, or where you came from, or what your native language was. You were there to learn how to shoot, move, and communicate. And if you were good at those things, you would make rank. You would move up in the rank. If you were capable of leading, you would get promoted. The military must be a meritocracy. And I'm, for one, a believer that that means that if you can meet the standards, I don't care what your what your gender is. Like if a woman can meet the same standards and she wants to be a Green Beret, welcome to the team, sister. Like, as long as the standards are kept high, right? And so this is something where we're talking about our very existence as a country. If we don't maintain a capable military, then we will cease to exist as the most powerful nation in the planet, for sure. And so this is deadly serious to me. But let me tell you how we fix it from the Senate standpoint. I will ask for a seat on the Senate Armed Services Committee, and I think as the first Green Beret there, I'll have a good argument to get that. And one of the things that we'll do in the first few months is confirm or not appointments to some of these key positions. And I'm talking about SecDef, secretaries of each of the branches. I'm talking about the Secretary of State, for that matter, the head of the CIA, the head of the National Security Council. Like, all of these things, we need to insist that is not just a rubber stamp from the U.S. Senate. And I think if President Trump's in the White House again, and let's hope he is, that he'll make good decisions. But even those we're going to vet. We're going to make sure that if this, when they come through the Senate confirmation process, that we're going to ask you the questions to make sure that you're focused on the right things. It also comes down to funding. I think that as a military person, I'm in a good place to be able to say, no, wait a second, that weapon system you're funding is just political, right? This is not something that the force is asking for. You're just funding this weapon system because it's a political favor for a certain district or whatever else. Non-military members of the Senate are maybe less capable of calling BS on that kind of thing. We need to focus on investing our precious defense dollars in things that actually work, systems that the force actually needs. And as you all know, the Defense Department is as capable as any federal bureaucracy of wasting money if we don't keep a close eye on it, right? So, yeah. Yes, sir.
Would you hold this for me? I'm probably the only person in here that can make this statement because I'm black. Not black, but red and black. My grandpa was Cherokee. My grandmama was African. I got a wife who's African American, and I got a brother over here from Somalia. So I want to say that, when we look at America, we could all have a bone to pick with America.
Sure.
Because you talk about human resources, well, a lot of us was involved in that slavery thing. But Corpus Attucks was the first American who died in the that war, the American Revolution, and he was a black man.
Yes, he was.
So we have to understand. We got Corpus Attucks. We had the Rangers down there in Panama. The Franklin Roosevelt, the Rough Riders. We had the Civil War. We had the who else? Well, let me go back to the Civil War. If you didn't have John Brown attacking Harper's Ferry, you wouldn't have had a Civil War.
From Akron, Ohio, by the way.
All right. And if you didn't have Lincoln, who said, okay, we're gonna free these slaves, you wouldn't have had no freedom. So we have to understand that it was the Spanish and the Portuguese that started slavery. It was the British that ended slavery. America and Britain got together, put the blockades around, and that's how come you have pirates raiding ships, because they could steal the ship and take the ship if they was carrying slaves. So you have to understand that this country was built on law. They said if you make the law, you got to follow the law. Well, we had a lot of laws that weren't good and everything. Well, they came around and changed the law. And so you have to understand that if we live by laws and everybody says this is the law and we live on those laws, then America has given us